In today's video from Practically Know It Productions, we're going to take a deep dive at Nintendo Switch 1 and Nintendo Switch 2's network options, and what you can tell the difference in from Nintendo Switch 1 original dock and Nintendo Switch 1's OLED dock, and what they improved upon with Nintendo Switch 2's dock. How's it going, everybody? I'm Practically Know It here, back again with another video. It's been 3 weeks now since the Nintendo Switch 2 has been released, and pretty much in my setup, I basically have both my Nintendo Switches in wired internet options, and also, of course, in handheld mode, they require Wi-Fi. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what you can do for better internet performance, both playing online games, as well as keeping your games up to date when updates are available. Let's take a look at what you can do with the dock first, then what you can do with the system, both in handheld and in dock mode. And we're also going to show you some network speeds in wired communication and see how you can improve upon it. But let's start off with the original Nintendo Switch 1 dock. As you can see, this is what it looks like originally back in 2017. Your two USB 2.0 ports at the side here. The flap for cable management of your USB power in, your USB A 3.0 port. Actually, Nintendo calls this as a 2.0 port actually, because I guess it's a circuit board limitation on the dock. And also your HDMI port. Originally, with the original Switch 1, it didn't come with an Ethernet port out of the packaging. So what are your options? Well, you could always stick with the Wi-Fi, but the Nintendo Switch 1 came out with Wi-Fi 5, which that Wi-Fi protocol came out in 2013, and now we moved on to Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, and Wi-Fi 7. However, Wi-Fi 7 still needs to be adopted for modern consumers. There are those routers that have Wi-Fi 7 built in, but again, who really needs that speed at this time? We have to think of our internet service providers as well, if they're going to adopt that ecosystem. Anyway, the Wi-Fi is the best option if you don't want to spend another dime for another product. But I actually purchased a USB Ethernet adapter by the company Ugreen. Of course, Nintendo did make a third-party licensed USB to Ethernet adapter by their third-party manufacturer Hori, but it uses USB 2 protocols. Ugreen has USB 2 and USB 3 versions, but I stick with the USB 3 in case if they did do the firmware update for USB 3 bandwidth on the dock, which they didn't yet. But as you can see, you have your USB A on one end and your RJ45 Ethernet port on the other. And these have, the reason why I got this one is because it was, I believe, 20 bucks, and it has LED status to know when it's downloading or in progress of certain tasks. And in order to plug this in, you can plug it either way. You can plug it on the side USB ports, like here, but I prefer at the back for better management, and of course the potential of USB 3 bandwidth. So you would just plug it in the back like so, and untangle a bit of the loose wire, and once you have your HDMI and USB-C power, just close the flap, and you'll get an Ethernet port kind of dangling at the back. Now, the Switch 1 OLED dock revision does have the built-in Ethernet port, so that means they removed the USB-A port at the back with the Ethernet port. So, and then, once you plug in the adapter, or you already have the Switch 1 OLED dock, you can apply the Ethernet cable. This is just for show. And plug it in a certain way. And once you plug it into your router, or if you're that network enthusiast who has an Ethernet switch like I do, you can plug it in there and you'll get your internet connectivity. And to get it out of the way, the Switch 2 dock is just like the Switch 1 OLED dock, where so you have your USB 2 ports here, but at the back you have your USB-C power delivery, your HDMI, and, believe it or not, a built-in Ethernet port. So all you have to do is make sure you align it correctly with the clicking mechanism by using up, and then Once you align your cable, you get your Ethernet out. I would like to recommend you find an Ethernet cable with a good housing, because if you make your own Ethernet cables, make sure you have to get some housing rubbers to make sure that the wires don't break. Of course, you can get your own, you can buy actual Ethernet cables from your local brick and mortar or on Amazon or online stores in general. So that's how you can connect this switch 1 and switch 2 to wired internet. Now let's take a look at how to assemble it correctly. Alright guys, I have my switch 1 and switch 2 re-hooked up. Before I show you performance tests with wired network connectivity, you always have to make sure that once you redock your switch, you have to make sure with the original switch 1 with the USB adapter, make sure you see, instead of the Wi-Fi bars, you'll see a little network snake. I forgot to mention in the previous step, the switch 2 does have Wi-Fi 6, so it's more faster than the switch 1's Wi-Fi 5. But as you can see, this is a network switch. I have 8 ports in it. Well, technically 7 for the actual peripherals. One of them is coming from my ISP router. And these lights are very small, so you really can't see it from here. So this is how you set them up correctly. Let's take a look at only the wired communication speeds, and then some tips and tricks on how to get better performance out of it. Alright everyone, here we have my Nintendo Switch 1 set up first for this demonstration. As you can see on the top right in the middle beside the time and the system battery, you will have, instead of the Wi-Fi bars that you see when you're playing in handheld mode, when you dock with that USB adapter, you'll get this sort of snake of a network cable. So now let's go to system settings and go to internet. As you can see, the connection status for me at the top, basically I'm wired. And again, I'm going to say this one more time. In order to get the Ethernet signal, you need to dock it correctly for both switch 1 and switch 2, because sometimes it may be finicky. Let's do a connection test to see the speed from the Nintendo Switch 1 with the Ugreen branded USB 3 to RJ45 Ethernet adapter. And of course the speeds will be different depending on your internet service provider, as well as the bandwidth coming from the Nintendo Switch 1 and the Switch 2. So as you can see, I get 60.3 megabits download and almost 5 megabits upload from the Switch 1 through Ethernet. I won't do Wi-Fi because of course it's personal, but as you can see with primary and secondary DNS, that's actually Google. So in order to do that, you go to internet settings. This will apply to both wired and wireless. So let's say we just do wired. Go to change settings. You change it to manual DNS settings. Then you type these numbers in. But when you type it in, you can just say 8888 and 8844 without typing in the extra zeros. And now this is an extra setting you should probably change. This is MTU settings. MTU is basically how much data information should be transferred both as a transmission and a receiving. So by default for the Switch 1 and Switch 2 it's 1400, so you want to change it to 1500. So let's just say I type it. So you press the back button of the B button and then you type 1500. This will give you more transmission for playing games and also download and upload speeds. So since it's this default, I don't have to save it. That's how you can do it with the Switch 1 with Ethernet. Now let's take a look at the Switch 2, which is basically the same process, but of course a built-in Ethernet port. We're in the Switch 2 user interface. So you go to system settings and we go to internet. As you can see, the one thing that the Switch 2 actually has is IPv6 or Internet Protocol version 6, but nobody really uses it right now at this time, and it's more difficult to set up with. So that's why we still use IPv4 or Internet Protocol version 4. But again, we're very limited with those options. So let's test the connection again. As you can see, wired.
Now again, this depends on your internet service provider. I usually get, with the Switch 2, since it's better, faster hardware, I get between 350 megabits download through Wi-Fi and around 400 plus in wired, and upload speeds somewhere around the 50 megabits per second range for both connectivities. That's how you do wired. And here's the settings again, which you kind of saw before I did the connection test. We're gonna go to change settings in the wired, for example. IPv6 connection, I guess you can disable it. Didn't really check that out. But this is also the Google DNS stuff. So again, all you have to do is just type in 88888 and 8844 without typing in the zeros. And the MTU is always default to 1400, so you have to change it again to 1500, like a good recommendation value. So as you can see, I don't really need to save it. And auto connect. That's why it works through that. So that's the option for wired connectivity or network options for better performance from online play or downloads on the Switch 1 and the Nintendo Switch 2. Hope you enjoyed today's new video. If you're looking for other Nintendo Switch 2 related videos, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. This is Impractically Noah saying goodbye, and thanks for watching.